Hello and welcome to Control Loop. What if BlackRock, JP Morgan, Circle, Fireblocks, Bitco, Ethereum, Solana, Canton all are preparing for the wrong audit? The next crypto crisis may not start with a hack, it may start with a stablecoin collapse, it may start with exchange failure, it may start with a CBOM and a cryptographic bill of materials, a machine readable inventory that asks a brutal question. What signs the assets? Not a pitch deck, not a custody dashboard, not a roadmap, the actual cryptography. Show me every algorithm that secures custody, movement, stablecoin issuance, tokenized funds, transfers, collateral, and privacy workflows and settlement finality. This happened on June 22nd, 2026. What I'm talking about is the Executive Order 14412. The name of the order is Securing the Nations Against Advanced Cryptographic Attacks. This has started the US federal post-quantum clock. The risk is no longer waiting for the quantum computer. The risk is entering a procurement, compliance, audit, vendor review, and a board oversight now. So I am Paarrthhh, the co-founder of EternaX. With me, there is Mansi, our legal and regulatory expert. The entire episode comes down to one question: what signs the asset and why is this question relevant? President Donald J. Trump has said in the executive order, collecting United States information now and decrypting it later is a big problem, and the next crypto crisis may not start with a hack, it may start with a CBOM audit. So we'll move over to Mansi, our legal expert. So Mansi, from a legal and statutory perspective, is Executive Order 14412 just another federal technology order?
No, it is actually a legal trigger for cryptographic accountability. Directly, the Executive Order 14412 applies to federal systems and covered contractors, but legally its importance is broader because it creates dates, responsibilities, standards, and procurement consequences. That is what boards and general counsels care about. The order actually requires federal migration towards NIST approved post-quantum cryptography. It creates agency-level ownership, federal migration deadlines, contractor pressure, and CBOM guidance. For digital assets, the most important part is digital signatures. Crypto is authorization. Custody transfer is authorization, stablecoin minting is authorization, tokenized fund transfer is authorization, collateral release is authorization, settlement finality is also authorization. So the legal question is not whether the order names crypto. The legal question is whether crypto infrastructure depends on cryptography that federal systems, contractors, regulated institutions, and auditors will now be forced to inventory, justify, and migrate. The answer to that is yes. President Donald J. Trump, in his Executive Order 14412, has said strengthen cryptographic protections. Executive Order 14412 turns post-quantum from a technical roadmap into a legal accountability clock.
This is great, Mansi. I mean, what you have said, but there is certain terms here that caught my attention. What is a CBOM and why is it dangerous for the institutional crypto right now? Could you explain more on this, Mansi? What is the legal requirements of CBOM?
Yeah, that is actually a very pertinent question. So a CBOM is a cryptographic bill of materials. Legally, think of it as evidence. It is an inventory of algorithms, keys, certificates, protocols, libraries, signing methods, and cryptographic dependencies. The executive order directs CISA and NIST to define minimum CBOM elements within 270 days. The purpose is automated assessment of cryptographic assets. That word matters, actually, automated. A company cannot simply say we are quantum ready. A CBOM asks what is deployed already. For blockchain systems, the question is brutal. What signs the transaction? If the answer is ECDSA or EdDSA, the system has a post-quantum migration gap. Ethereum, Solana, Canton, all of these expose their ECDSA signing configuration. In a normal CBOM, those are inventory items. In a post-quantum CBOM review, they become migration debt. Ethereum, Solana, Canton do not fail because they are bad networks. They would fail because a post-quantum readiness screen, because a production signing layer is classical. A roadmap does not pass a CBOM, a deployed system actually does. Like President Trump has already said, cryptographic bill of materials, the CBOM does not ask which chain is popular, it asks which cryptography signs the asset.
Got it. I mean, this is this lays out basically the relevance of the cryptographic bill of materials, and basically what you're saying is that this thing has to happen, and it's more of an automated task. So there is no moving around this. Either you pass or fail in this. So there's not much that you can do about it, and institutions have to really start getting worried. So now the next question to you, Mansi, I have is, how does this federal order reaches any private institutions or private crypto companies, custodians, stablecoin companies, issuers, or tokenization platform? Because this is a very blatant question that is asked to me, is that it is a federal order, it is for the federal agencies, and why would anybody, any private company get covered under this? So can you explain me on that, Mansi?
That happens through the compliance cascade. So federal systems need PQC, federal contractors need PQC. Contractors will ask vendors for evidence, banks ask custodians for evidence. Custodians will in turn ask chains, wallets, MPC providers, and settlement providers for evidence. Asset managers will ask tokenization platforms for evidence. Auditors will ask everyone for evidence. And that is how legal pressure moves through the market. A private company may not be directly named in the executive order, but it can still be reached contractually, commercially, operationally, and reputationally. A major bank, asset manager, custodian, or a payment network will basically ask, can this infrastructure survive vendor risk review, audit, procurement, and board oversight? Once a risk is named, dated, and standardized, and auditable, it becomes difficult for a board to treat it as theoretical. So what President Trump has said in the executive order is critical infrastructure, owners, and operators. The pressure chain is simple: government to bank, bank to custodian, custodian to chain.
Got it. So basically, it's not you cannot just say that we are just not covered. It is just for the federal agencies, and there is a chain of command there, which basically you listed out the government to bank, bank to custodian, custodian to chain, because obviously at the end of the day, these assets are born on any chain, and hence the guarantees of these cryptographic proofs comes from the chain, and then move upwards. So this is great, Mansi. And can you give me 2 examples of how a non-federal company gets pulled into this?
Yes. So for example, a crypto custodian which is serving a bank. Think Fireblocks, BitGo, Anchorage Digital, Coinbase Prime, Copper, Zodia Custody, Taurus, or Fortify serving JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, BNY, Citi, State Street, Standard Chartered, or Deutsche Bank. The bank may not be a federal agency, but it is regulated, audit sensitive, vendor reviewed, and often connected to federal clients or market infrastructure. That bank can ask, what signs your asset movement? Do you rely on ECDSA or EdDSA? Do you have CBOM? What is your PQC migration plan? If the custodian signs on Ethereum, Solana, or Canton, and the CBOM shows ECDSA or ED25519. Second example, a tokenized fund or stablecoin issuer, think BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, WisdomTree, Securitize, Circle, Paxos, PayPal, MasterCard, JP Morgan, or Citi. If their assets touch regulated clients, payment trails, federal contractors, or institutional counterparties, clients will ask whether minting, burning, transfers, blacklisting, collateral movement, and settlement are cryptographically defensible. You may not be named by the order, but your client's audit can still reach you. So to quote Hester Pierce, former SEC commissioner, tokenized securities are still securities. You may not be named by the order, but your client's audit can still reach you.
So got it, Mansi. I think what you're saying here is very clear, is that, I mean, this is, anybody is there are a lot of individuals who are interacting and with the federal agencies, and some SECs, some individuals are they have OCC charters as well, stablecoin issuers, and OCC is basically a federal agency. So the situation can be that because there is a federal agency that is required to commit to this thing, they will require that they will ask the charter holders, okay, give me your audit, essentially. And then the charter holders will say that, okay, I don't have it, but I'll ask my custodians, I will ask my chain. And that's the cascading effect that you are talking about. So essentially, a lot of these names which you listed would essentially be covered in this. One last question is with you is that, can institutions still say that they are waiting for the post-quantum signatures or standards to mature?
No, not for the core standards. NIST has already finalized the first 3 post-quantum cryptography standards back in August 2024. FIPS 203 is MLKEM for key establishment. FIPS 204 and 205 are for digital signature, and SLH-DSA based on Sphinx, also for digital signatures. So for institutions, that changes the legal posture quite a bit. Waiting is no longer a neutral position. For digital assets, signatures are the key issue. What signs custody movement, what signs token issuance, collateral release, and settlement instructions? If the answer is classical ECDSA or EdDSA, the institution has a migration problem. Dustin Moody from NIST has already said that full integration will take time. So in summation, the standards are not coming. The first standards are already here.
Got it. I think this is very clear. This is very clear that there is no point of waiting on the standards that you already have established, that FIPS 205, FIPS 204, that is dilithium and Sphinx, is already out there, which was published in 2024. So there's already standards which people should start integrating, and they should not be looking out for much more confirmations from the NIST. And anyways, these standards are published, so there is there's no delay in terms of even the NIST, that you can say that NIST has not approved any standards. These standards are there. You just have to go there and start applying them and get a passing CBOM audit. So this is cool, Mansi. I think now you have certain questions to me, regarding the business side of things, of what all this executive order, how it's going to impact the institutions.
All right, let's jump in. So Paarth, my first question to you on the business side of things is, what are the key dates that the institutions need to keep in mind when it comes to the CBOM?
So these are the 5 dates windows that the institutions should track, Mansi. Very clear. First is June 22, 2026. That is the trigger date, and that is when the executive order of 144.12 started the federal post-quantum clock. The second is very clear. It is first 90 to 180 days from this day. This is when the federal guidance and agency planning and contractor rule momentum will begin to form. The third is approximately March 2027. That is the CBOM window. The CISA and NIST are expected to define the minimum CBOM elements within 270 days of the order, and that is approximately coming out to be March 2027. So this is the first major exposure point for private institutions, because that is why when they will understand that, okay, these things are covered and I have to get these things audited, and my audit will either fail or pass. Now the fourth date is very critical, Mansi. This is December 31st, 2030. Federal high value systems must migrate key establishments to PQC, and the contractor pressure becomes much more concrete. The fifth is December 31st, 2031. That is where federal high value systems must migrate digital signatures to PQC. That means 2031 is the last date where the high value systems should have migrated completely 100% without any lapse to the post-quantum cryptography. For crypto, 2031 is the most important date, because digital asset move through signatures, and the institutional reality is very simple. 2026 creates the clock, 2027 creates the audit mechanism, 2030 creates the procurement pressure, 2031 creates the signature deadline. The firm that wait until 2030 will be too late. And so just to sum it up, 2027 is the CBOM year and 2031 is the signature year.
Right. So we don't have as long as we'd like to have. That is actually a very informative path. And move on to the next question, which is basically, what does this actually mean for the board, general counsels like me, and regulated institutions?
Mansi, it means that post-quantum risk is now a legal shape, has legal shape, and you can basically, the legal eyes can read it, legal eyes can shape it. It has dates, it has standards, legal loves those things. It has named federal agencies, it has procurement consequences, it has audit evidence, and that changes the board oversight. A board now can be asked, did you know your infrastructure dependent on ECDSA or EDDSA? Did you ask vendors for a CBOM? Did you review the chain level signing dependency? Did you assess Ethereum, Solana, Canton, Bitcoin, or Stellar exposure? Did you create a migration plan before procurement pressure arrived? Legal teams do not need to prove that a quantum computer break is coming tomorrow. They need to prove the institution acted reasonably once the risk became named, dated, and standardized. So that already has happened with this order, Mansi. So for BlackRock, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, State Street, Citi, BNY, DTCC, Broadridge, MasterCard, Circle, Paxos, Fireblocks, BitGo, CoinPrime, Copper, Zodiac Custody, Securitize, this is not a panic. It is a diligence. So once the risk has been named, it has been dated, it is now auditable. We were waiting becomes a very weak defense for any board of these institutions.
That's very moving on. Many custodians will say we use MPC, so we are safe. Is that a correct assumption?
No, definitely not, Mansi. MPC is important, but it does not make the underlying blockchain signature post-quantum safe. MPC solves the key management. It can split the signing authority. It can prove policy controls. It can reduce the single key compromise. But if the final on-chain transaction is still verified through ECDSA, the settlement layer still remains classical. So that is the hard truth. If Fireblock and BitGo, Anchorage, Copper, and Coinbase Prime, Taurus, Zodia, Fortify, they signed the transaction on Ethereum, Solana, Canton, Bitcoin, or Stellar, the question is not whether the custody workflow is sophisticated. The question is whether the final settlement is post-quantum defensible. Ethereum means ECDSA exposure. Solana means ECDSA exposure. Canton means ECDSA exposure. So MPC can split the key. It cannot make Ethereum, Solana, Canton post-quantum. If you have to, go post-quantum safe, then you have to connect with it at EternaX. You can have MPC post-quantum safe at EternaX. You can have HSM custody post-quantum safe with EternaX. So in one line, MPC basically secures the workflow. It does not automatically secure the settlement primitive. So the underlying thing would be wrong that, we custody, and custody is equally unsafe in the post-quantum world.
No, that is a very interesting insight into how to actually make custody safe, especially when institutions are moving into crypto very quickly. That is actually very eye-opening for our listeners, I'm sure. Moving on to the next question, Parth. Why do you think stablecoins, tokenized funds, RWAs, and collateral are the highest impact categories when it comes to post-quantum?
Yeah, definitely, Mansi. I think this is very, very critical, because when it comes down to these assets, this is one point which is ignored a lot of times. These are long duration financial claims. It's not a 5-year, it is not a 6-year, 7-year. It is a 30-year, 50-year, 100 years claims. And there are a lot of public companies which are still listed 60 years back, and they're still running. Their shares are being traded, and they grow over the period. So it's not that these shares get lost. I mean, these are long duration financial claims. A stable coin is a payment infrastructure. A tokenized treasury is a financial claim. A tokenized fund share is a regulated ownership. A collateral token is a balance sheet infrastructure. A settlement instruction is a market plumbing. So these assets must survive audit, Mansi. They should survive custody. They should survive redemption, reporting, compliance, and legal review for years. That makes the signing layer very strategic. A stable coin issued on Ethereum, it inherits the dependency on ECDSA. A tokenized payment flow on Solana, that inherits again the ECDSA dependency. The institutional flow on Canton again inherits the same problems of ECDSA. So the issue is not only the issuer, custodian, administrator. It is the full cryptographic path from the authorization to the settlement. So for Circle, Paxos, PayPal, JP Morgan, Citi, MasterCard, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Wisdom Tree, State Street, Securitize, Hamilton Lane, KKR, Apollo, the question is very simple. Can the asset survive post-quantum audit or not? Post-quantum is not only security, it is a compliance, access and distribution system. Larry Fink from BlackRock has already said that every stock, every bond, every fund can be tokenized and will be tokenized. The asset is only as PQ ready as the signing layer that moves it. This is the important point here, Mansi. So, I mean, this is all very much tied to the base layer. If the base is not post-quantum safe, then it's very difficult.
Right. That is very clear that every asset carries its own post-quantum migration debt. So unless that is resolved, the asset wouldn't entirely be safe. That is a very important thing, I think, for issuers and the entire Wall Street to understand as the entire Wall Street moves on chain. Moving on to the next question, Parth. Why do ECDSA and EdDSA become migration debt? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for our listeners?
Yeah, definitely, Mansi. I think because see, the institutional asset, they live longer than crypto narratives that I have already told you. The customer wallet can migrate quickly. The meme token can disappear, but tokenized funds, stablecoin reserve flow, collateral rails, settlement ledger, custody stack, they cannot simply say that we will move later. The problem is migration requires wallet updates, account migration, custody changes, smart contract compatibility, vendor attestation, investor communication, legal review and audit evidence. Sometimes migration is not clean because the contract is immutable. So the chain upgrade is uncertain or institutional dependencies are already live. So this is why, we can say that, the ECDSA migration is not just algorithms. They become migration debt. Ethereum is not just liquidity, it is a migration debt. Solana is again, not just throughput, but a migration debt. And Canton, again, not just institutional workflow, it is basically a migration debt unless the production signing layer becomes PQ native. That is what EternaX is already, and that is what we have been stressing upon for the institutions in whom we are discussing with, that PQ native issuance takes away all these problems. There are a lot of problems with the migrations with all these chains are facing, and we will publish that report pretty soon. This is very critical. They should adopt PQ native, basically saying that today when they issue on a chain which is PQ native day one, so that they do not have any migration challenges or any migration problem. And a CBOM audit will be a pass for them on EternaX. So this will make this audit and they will pass the CBOM audit, and this can be used as a distribution edge as well as with this thing. So Ethereum, Solana and Canton are not only networks in a PQ review, they are a cryptographic dependencies, which I know there is a lot of there's a lot of lack of education on these topics, but we are bringing a very well-rounded report just to cover the challenges of these three. And mind Mansi, we are stressing on this point again. This report is very critical for the readers, because who say or who assume that just plain migration will solve everything, because a lot of things are not also in the hands of the chain itself. So there are a lot of problems which are outside that, which the chain may not solve also for the people. So there are a lot of immutable contracts which are used by DeFi, which just cannot be changed. So they have to suffer a lot of losses. Those things are very real threats and challenges. So yeah, we'll publish that report pretty soon, Mansi, and our listeners and yourself and to the community, they will have it for review.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a very interesting report, and we look forward to looking into it and understanding the post-quantum threat map all around us. Now, coming to EternaX, can you tell me a little bit more about why EternaX focuses on Sphinx Plus or SLH-DSA?
Yeah, definitely, Mansi. This is one of the very basic questions that we get asked a lot. There are three schemes. One is Falcon, Dilithium, and Sphinx, which is why do we go for Sphinx and why do we suggest the institutions to go with Sphinx? So institutional finance should be optimized for the lowest cryptographic regret. Full stop. That is the line. The Sphinx or the MLDSA, which is Dilithium, is finalized and will likely become a major enterprise default. Right. Falcon may become attractive where compact signature matter once its FIPS path has been completed. But With Sphinx and SLH-DSA or SLH-DSA, the different has a different institutional value proposition. And that value proposition, Mansi, is it is hash based. For long-lived ownership, custody authorization, stablecoin issuance, tokenized fund transfer, and settlement finality, the question is not which signature is the smallest. The question is which foundation reduces the chance of second migration. So what I'm trying to say here is that you are migrating once today to a PQ post-quantum migration scheme. The chances of future migration you have to reduce, because you don't want this problem, again and again in your life. So Sphinx has larger signatures, but it solves this problem. You will never, it is one of the most oldest schemes. It is the most battle tested schemes. It has survived, attacks. There have been no noted attacks on Sphinx. And the absolute genius of it goes to the hash based structure. So this is real. But that is why the architecture also matters. Legacy chains were not designed around post-quantum signatures. EternaX, on the other hand, is designed around Sphinx from day one. So the goal is approved scheme security in the background. You get a clean passing CBOM evidence audit compliance and market speed settlement in the product. So we are at EternaX we are not compromising at the speed, Mansi. We are providing you 50K to 200K TPS with Sphinx, which is the most heaviest. Why we are able to give it? Because we have designed the chain around this. And the rest of the chains are not designed around it. So for long-lived financial assets, the idea is that is optimized for lowest cryptographic regret.
I think that's very quotable for myself, and I'm sure the viewers as well. The lowest cryptographic regret. Coming to the architecture now, Paarth, what does a post-quantum native look like at the infrastructure level?
So yeah, Mansi, so post-quantum native means the chain is designed for the post-quantum signatures from the inception. Retrofitting PQ signatures into existing chain is not a small upgrade, right? That we have decided and we have communicated as well that it is a structural redesign. So according to EternaX, the architecture analysis, we have we have done this analysis about different chains. Ethereum loses approximately 84% of the TPS under the PQ signature. Solana has publicly reported 90% loss. Canton loses 88% of the TPS. Stellar loses 90% of the TPS. So this is a structural problem for institutional settlement. EternaX was designed from day one with Sphinx, which is the most conservative PQ scheme under NIST FIPS 205. And this is the transaction signing primitive. This is not a future upgrade. It is not a roadmap. It is the base layer. We start with this at EternaX. So according, our basically our features are, we have 50K to 200K TPS. We have 20 to 50 milliseconds of finality. We have 400 to 500 milliseconds of hard finality. And we face approximately just 2% of TPS loss under PQ signatures as compared to 80% or 90% with Ethereum, Solana, or Stellar or Canton. So you run a CBOM on Ethereum, it returns fail. It says you use ECDSA, hence you fail. You run CBOM on Solana, it says fail. You run CBOM on Canton, it says fail. You run CBOM on EternaX, it returns SLH-DSA under FIPS 205, a clean conservative pass. So that is what a clean CBOM looks like. And Ethereum returns ECDSA, Solana again, same. EternaX returns SLH-DSA under FIPS 205.
Yeah, I think that TPS loss of 80% versus 2% is pretty stark, and that is something that institutions should consider. That is a very interesting observation from this analysis that EternaX has conducted. Moving on, what is EternaX's answer in one clean business statement, if you had to put it like that?
So great question, Mansi. So EternaX is a post-quantum native infrastructure for the institutional digital assets. The market does not need another chain that promises migrate later, and that's what we never say we are PQ native. You come on us and you become post quantum day one. The market needs infrastructure that is designed for post quantum compliance world from day one inception, and that means that Sphinx and Sphinx or SLH-DSA based security under FIPS 205 is day one. PQ safe custody workflows is day one. Auditable privacy is day one. Clean CBOM readiness day one. Market speed settlement day one. Stablecoin, tokenized fund, RWA, collateral movement, institutional settlement. Institutions do not need to buy narratives. They buy defensibility. Can this pass the audit? Can this satisfy procurement? Can this support regulated assets? Can this survive board review? Can this reduce migration debt? The first institution to become PQ native will market it as an eligibility. Eligible for banks, eligible for federal agency adjacent procurement, eligible for tokenized collateral, eligible for long duration institutional assets. And this is the EternaX wedge. So if you come with us and join with us, like the many institutions that are discussing with us and joining us on this PQ native journey, if the institution comes to us, they can use post quantum native not only as a strategic security advantage, but also as an regulatory advantage, because now the audit requirement is clean for them. It is already, they will be passing the CBOM audit with flying colors, while their competitors will be lagging behind. So this is the narrative that we have. And PQ native is not, just not a security now, it is an institutional eligibility, I would say. And Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase has already said that a whole new set of competitors are coming and emerging in the blockchain space and around tokenization and everything. So I mean, this is a good time for everybody to gain the edge very early on, and we can start. So I'll quickly recap, Mansi, what we have said. There is a lot of things beautiful. There are a lot of good things that have been spoken about in this particular podcast, and I would like to summarize those for our listeners at the end who want clear summary of what has happened. So the final takeaway for the institutional crypto, what is it from this? Is the takeaway is very simple. Crypto is preparing for a wrong audit. The market is watching reserves, custody controls, and regulation. But the next institutional capital, the question is very basic. What signs the asset? Executive order has 14412 creates that clock. The CBOM creates the audit mechanism. The NIST standard created the approval migration path already. ECDSA and EdDSA creates the exposure. Ethereum, Solana, Canton do not fail because they are bad networks. They fail because the post-quantum readiness screen inside the CBOM because their production signing layer is classical. So the MPC does not remove that exposure if the final settlement still depends on classical signature. And we have observed that retrofitting PQ signatures into existing chains creates 84% to 90% of the capacity loss. EternaX is designed with Sphinx SLH-DSA, that is FIPS 205, from day one. One of the NIST approved schemes with approximately 2% TPS loss under the PQ native architecture. For institutional digital asset, the question is no longer on which chain has the liquidity today. The question is which infrastructure can defend the asset ownership. The custody authorization, stablecoin issuance, tokenized fund transfer, collateral release, the privacy workflows, settlement finality in a post-quantum compliance world. So this is EternaX thesis. The next crypto crisis may not start with a hack. It may start with a CBOM audit, and the market will ask one question: what signs the assets? And that is the last question that I'll leave the team and the listeners with. We will post the blog as well that we have written. It is a very clear blog on this executive order that will be provided in the description box. And thank you, Mansi, once again for taking out the time. The Mansi is the legal and the regulatory genius that we have with us, and she has been on with us on the EternaX journey, guiding us on the legal and regulatory developments. This was one of the biggest legal and regulatory developments, and thank you, Mansi, for providing your wonderful thoughts here. And to our listeners, we would request you to keep listening to us. and subscribe us, and we keep on posting the interesting developments in the post-quantum space. So thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.